It is July 1976 in Nice, France, a city defined by high society glamour and financial institutions built like fortresses to protect the wealth of the Mediterranean elite. But on a routine Monday morning at the Société Générale Bank, the staff encountered a physical impossibility. The 20-ton steel vault door was unresponsive. The codes were correct and the power was on, but the massive mechanism refused to turn. 3 hours of troubleshooting followed. As customers filled the lobby, the bank brought in a specialized crew to drill a small observation hole through the reinforced concrete wall adjacent to the door. When they peered through the hole, the confusion turned to shock. The vault door hadn't jammed or malfunctioned. It had been intentionally welded shut from the inside, with steel plates fused directly over the locking bolts. This was a windowless room with reinforced steel walls and only one entrance. There were no other doors and no ventilation shafts large enough for a person. The investigators were looking at a room that had been perfectly sealed by occupants who had no way of getting out. The very security measures designed to keep intruders away from the money were now being used to keep the police out of the vault. The room's physical logic only made sense once police battered through the wall. Inside, they found the concrete floor broken through from below, revealing a dark shaft. This tunnel bypassed every alarm, connecting the vault directly to the city's municipal sewer, 26 feet underground. The bank's security was designed to defend a building on a street level. It failed because it assumed the ground beneath the vault was a solid, permanent barrier, rather than a navigable path. The architect of this breach was Albert Spaggiari. A professional photographer by trade, he approached the bank with a lens for technical detail, looking past the granite facades to find the structural contradictions in its design. Spaggiari realized that the vault's external defenses were too formidable to challenge. He began searching for a blind spot, a place where the bank's sensors simply weren't looking. He rented a private locker inside the vault as a customer. During one visit, he hid a mechanical alarm clock inside his locker, setting the bell to ring in the middle of the night. When he returned the next day, the bank was calm. No alarms had been triggered and no security response had been logged. This confirmed that the vault lacked any internal acoustic or vibration sensors. Next, he needed a map of the world beneath the bank. Posing as an engineer, Spaggiari walked into a government office and walked out with confidential plans for the city's underground sewer and drainage networks. Overlaying sewer maps with the bank's floor plans, Spaggiari identified a precise intersection where public infrastructure passed directly beneath the bank's foundation. This gap was 26 feet of raw earth, the only unmonitored space between the sewer and the vault. Spaggiari's plan worked by moving the entire operation into this 26-foot gap, effectively operating beneath the bank's field of vision and rendering its street-level security irrelevant. To dig the tunnel, Spaggiari ignored common thieves and hired specialists, professional miners and welders who could operate industrial tools in confined, dangerous spaces. For 2 months, the team worked at night. While the city of Nice was sleeping above, a crew was 20 feet below the pavement, removing tons of earth by hand and reinforcing the tunnel with timber as they went. The conditions were brutal. They worked in the dark, through the stench of the sewer, using silenced drills and a portable ventilation system to keep the air breathable as they tunneled toward the vault floor. On the night of Saturday, July 17th, they reached the concrete. They breached the floor and climbed up into the dark, silent vault. Because the bank was closed for the weekend, they had 48 hours of total privacy. They brought in camping stoves to cook meals and drink tea, while they systematically forced open 400 safe deposit boxes. They took roughly $110 million in cash, gold, and jewels. Before leaving, they spent hours welding the vault door shut from the inside, ensuring that when the staff arrived on Monday, they would be unable to enter the crime scene. The crew didn't just rob the bank, they occupied it. For 2 days, the most secure room in Nice was effectively their private residence. The scene left behind was surreal. Investigators found abandoned stoves, empty wine bottles, and the remains of meals scattered across the floor of the emptied vault. On the wall, the team had spray-painted a message in French: "Without weapons, without hatred, without violence." Spaggiari intended the heist to be a direct humiliation of the establishment, a demonstration that intellectual preparation could bypass the most expensive physical defenses. The investigation finally made progress 3 months later, not through forensic evidence, but through a tip from a gang member's girlfriend who grew suspicious of his sudden wealth. Spaggiari had accounted for every physical and technical variable in the bank's architecture, but the one factor he couldn't engineer was the human element outside of the tunnel. Facing a life sentence, Spaggiari remained remarkably composed in the judge's chambers. He wasn't looking at the guards or the gavel. He was mapping the distance to the window. He handed the judge a complex coded document that he claimed would lead to the missing money. As the judge looked away to examine the symbols, Spaggiari moved. He leaped from the second-story window, landing on the roof of a parked car where a getaway driver was already waiting on a motorcycle. Albert Spaggiari was never caught again. He lived for over a decade as a fugitive, occasionally granting interviews, while the vast majority of the $110 million remained missing. He left behind a vault with no signs of struggle, and a bank whose ultimate weakness was the very ground it was built upon. He didn't break the bank's security. He simply used the city's own architecture to render it irrelevant.